Welcome back to First Class Fantasy. I'm Theo Gremminger. Billy Muzio is not with me today, but I'm joined by my friend Andrew Cooper of FantasyAlarm. Andrew and I have chopped it up here on First Class Fantasy. Press coverage, we've chopped it up on Andrew's podcast. Andrew, you and I have chopped it up so many times this year. This is like, I'm not even going to send you a show sheet, but I capitulated and I did send you a show sheet. So
I didn't look at it. So
yeah,
don't worry
that's
about
it. It's Alan Sislowski, my co-host of Sonic Truth, has a very colorful description of show sheets, but it kind of is like show sheets are for cowards, but he uses a different word than cowards.
I was on with him and Jim Coventry, and I know how they go with that. Yeah, they're not interested in that. And hey, I'm with you on that. But I know on the same channel, Matt Kelly, the show sheet is sacred, right? The Podfather show sheet is legendary and elaborate. So hey, you know what? More than one way to skin a cat, right there.
Billy Muzio is a big show sheet guy. I'm like I do every show sheet. I talk down about show sheets, but then every show I'm in, I end up sending the show sheet. So like, I guess I've fallen in line. But we have a really exciting show today. The pace of the regular season is over. You churn out so much content at FantasyAlarm. I churn out a ton of content here at Player Profiler. But I feel like once we get past, week 17, you have a little bit of the weight off your shoulders in terms of like the continual timeline, a little bit of time to breathe, and then we just dive right into this NFL playoffs. But it's so much fun. We both wrote articles about the FFPC Playoff Challenge, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to pick a team. We're going to do all that. But why don't you let everybody know what you've got going on, sort of your off-season pace here at FantasyAlarm?
Yeah, so there really is no off season for either of us, right? I mean, it's a nonstop schedule. And the good thing is I've been doing this long enough that I have a schedule. So people want to hit me up for Dynasty, stuff like that. I'm not into that just yet because I don't play Devy. If you have a draft before the NFL draft, I personally consider that to be Devy adjacent. And there are people you can reach out to. Definitely the people at Player Profiler are already looking at it, the Campus to Canton guys, the JWB guys. For me, what I do is I go deep on these playoff contests. So I'm in FFPC. I'm in a bunch of the one and dones. I do some of the best balls. I do some of the DFS. Doesn't matter. And then I start working on my free agent stuff. And then we get the combine and the draft. Right at the draft, we do Dynasty. By that time, we're already back in the best ball. I mean, I sneak in some best ball in March anyway. And then it's the Scott Fish Bowl, and we're back at redraft, man. So it really never stops. If you just follow me on Twitter at Coupe Fiasco, easiest way to get my stuff. But no, we keep rocking all year long, and I love these playoff contests. So you definitely got to get set up and get going, especially with the FFPC, because, this is the one where you can really – there's so many layers to it, right? The weekly version of FFPC, I've been doing it all year, where you make one lineup, can't have two guys from the same team, and that's fun, but that's checkers. This is chess. You make one lineup, it's can't have two guys from the same team, but that has to last you all the way through the playoffs. But again, we'll get to that when we get to that, right there.
Yeah, and the FFPC playoff contest is my preferred choice. For high stakes, I'll play in multiple platforms. I play FFPC, I play NFFC, but I love the finality of the FFPC where I pick it and I'm done. And that's it. You're locked in. There's no like going in and changing things up. You have we'll get in a little bit more in the rules, but it makes you really kind of focus in on picking correctly the teams that are going to make the Super Bowl, in addition to picking the correct players. And then there's so much game theory we're going to dive into about chalk and about how you could be going up with a contest where being unique versus being, correct, and all sorts of things, kind of fall into place there. But before we get into the NFL playoffs, before we get into anything with the FFPC playoff challenge, Coop, you're a Boston guy. Over your shoulder, you got Marcus Smart. You got the Celtics, you got the Bruins, you got the Red Sox, you got Tom Brady over your shoulder.
This one is right here?
Is that Pedro?
Pedro Martinez.
Okay, so you got to get a bigger Pedro.
I got to get a bigger Pedro. We need a bigger Pedro. And I think there's multiple pictures of Vinatieri on there. I could probably lose one of those.
Yeah, lose a Vinatieri and have the equal size Brady and Pedro. I think it's just aesthetically pleasing behind you. But
I should just give her the whole thing and just have a Manny Ramirez fathead. That's it. That's what I really should be doing.
You have all these people in the fantasy industry Jax Falcone, Matty Kiwoom from Player Profiler, and it's it's a very emotional day because there's been a real disappointment with how like the season has turned out for the Patriots last season, this season. But this is something where Bill Belichick was like one of the. I mean, let's face it. When it comes down to a Mount Rushmore of NFL head coaches in the history of the sport, Bill Belichick is there. Uh, when you think of Bill Belichick, I have two questions for you. What's your favorite Super Bowl victory? And what's your favorite non-Super Bowl memory? Because I think when you talk to Patriots fans, you're going to get a lot of different answers on this question.
Yeah, so I gotta say, I mean, like, so me personally, I'm 34 years old, and Bill Belichick's been the coach since I was 11. So I remember Pete Carroll very briefly as a coach, and I remember Bill Parcells. Before that, I barely remember Bill Parcells because I was like 5, 6, 7 years old. So like that's it. It's Ben Belichick the entire time, man. And I gotta say that even though the when I was young, beating the Rams, it seemed like an impossible task. When we beat the greatest show on turf, even though that was, incredible, it has to be the Falcons Super Bowl. It has to be the
Oh yeah.
Falcons one because I've never been so down and out, right? I've never been so drunk, to be honest, but I've never been so down and out that at halftime I was just like, what should we? I was going with my boys. I was like, what should we do now? Like, should we play cards? Do you want to play? You know what I mean? We hung with it. We watched the whole game, and they came back from 28-3 to win that one. The Edelman catch, the Julio Jones catch would have been one of the greatest catches of all time, but was on the wrong side of the game. I mean, that game just has everything you want, man, in a amazing comeback, and it just so happened to also be the Super Bowl. So that's the one for me. That's got to be the one for me. As far as non on field stuff for Bill Belichick, man, there's a lot of it, dude. I mean, you and I talked before this, and I I love Bill Belichick, the character, and the separation between who he is when the reporters are asking him questions, and even sometimes the way he is when he finally gets a question that he can't answer because he's never going to tell you about the game script, he's never going to tell you about the team, but when he gets a question about long snappers in the history, he'll talk for 20 minutes. And you brought it up. I think it has to be the Halloween, man. It has to be
Yeah,
the
that's it.
Halloween where Randy Moss goes into his office and says, "Hey, you know what? We're having a little bit of a party. I got to invite you. You don't have to come." He's like, "You're probably not going to come. It's going to be at this roller rink, the whole deal." And he doesn't think Belichick's going to show, and Belichick shows up with a hottie with him, rocking the pirate costume. Randy Moss is SpongeBob, and just seeing him out there skating and doing all that, it makes you realize this is actually a real dude. And even though he is like a football genius and he takes it very seriously, he is kind of a normal person and a cool guy. So man, it's just there's a lot of that stuff with Bill Belichick, but that was the number one. That is the number one. And if you go back through time, there's a lot of those moments, but that one was a big one for me.
Yeah, and I love how I don't love it. It actually makes me feel it's kind of like it's a very bittersweet day for football fans in general because within the last 24 hours, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, and then Pete Carroll doesn't even, all respect to Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's a legend, but he doesn't hit that top two. But if you kind of put the weight of those three guys together, the kind of the levity of them all not in the same place, you have such a used to seeing these guys. Pete Carroll was like automatic USC, then Seattle, no break. That's it. Bill Belichick continual at New England, and then Nick Saban, how dominant he's been at Alabama. And I think the thing about all three of them is they have those real personalities and they're completely genuine dudes.
Right.
You have so many guys in coaching where they either try to be best friends with the players or they have these robotic, like hard ass like mentality. And these guys were kind of neither. They were sort of a mesh of in between because they have like universal respect from their players and they all had their own like idiosyncrasies. But what a like emotional day, whether you're a college football fan or an NFL fan. But like I just look through like our friend Jax Falcone, of the undroppables and the undrafted, like he's a Boston guy, like yourself, New England guy, and like people are either really mad about this or really just sad. And even if people thought that there should have been a change, there's still such a sadness with it. Now, let me ask you this. Would you have kept Bill Belichick and let him ride out in the sunset? It's going to be very weird because we both agreed in the pre-show, you're talking about a guy that we both agree is going to be on an NFL sideline next year.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I want to hear the details of it, because it could even come out that it's a mutual type thing, and that Belichick knew they were going to go with a rookie quarterback or whatever, and he wants a different scheme. So we have to hear what's going on with that. But honestly, man, it's the same thing with Tom Brady, where it wasn't working out. He clearly, I think that he could stay and be successful. I think he could go somewhere else and be successful. I'm just gonna, root for him and absorb as much information as I can and enjoy the ride, man. Because it's like we spend so much time speculating, and I love speculating about where he's gonna go. But when it comes down to why he's leaving and the decision, I just hope at some point we get to hear that, man, because with some of the stuff like Malcolm Butler, we never heard. So I'm just fingers crossed that we're going to find out why. I will say this about Bill Belichick, and about it goes to us and everybody out there, and what you're doing is that the reason that these guys can have the success they have, Saban and Belichick and Pete Carroll, is that they're consistent with what they do. And Pete Carroll, being a player's coach, he has been consistent with that. Right? Like, he's consistent in letting guys play, letting them do whatever. It's when you don't have a plan from the start and you flip-flop on things and you change things around, that's when you lose half the people, or you lose a couple of the people. And then once you lose a couple of people, you've lost everybody. And that's what makes Mike Tomlin, in my opinion, such a great coach. His whole mantra, the standard is the standard, and doing things a certain way and sticking by that. That's how you get people to follow you, and that's how you're a great leader. And that goes back to us with the stuff that we do. For a long time, I was just all over the place, being like, 10 end articles this week, and I forget it next week, or I don't do it the following week, or I don't have any sort of plan. Ever since I've had a plan and an approach, and I tweet my Twitter the same way, where it's like certain topics are off limit, things have been a lot better for me. So everybody out there, if you want to get into something big and try and do something big and be a leader, have a plan and plan it up front. And there's a person that gave me that in this industry, that advice. It's JJ Zacharyson, where I saw him at the FSGA, and he said that he was like, plan whatever you're going to do, plan it out in advance. And that's what these coaches do. And that's what makes them so successful. So whatever Belichick does next, you better believe that it's well thought out, and it's planned well in advance.
And also, you can kind of plan, like Coop and I, to do fantasy football literally all day, and then at night before you go to sleep. And it's just like, yeah, but Belichick, legend. Let me ask you this. This is a big one. There's so many head coaching openings right now that before it looked like, Chargers were probably the most likely destination. Where do we think he's going to be a head coach next season? Because I think we both have differing opinions of this.
Right. So, I mean, the big question, I mean, there's a difference between where I want him to go and potentially where he will end up, or where he should go. And it boils down to whether he wants to be a part. I mean, he's 71 years old. Like, does he want to be a part of the rebuild? Does he want to be part of the rolling the dice on a quarterback? Right. So for me, my opinion is that he should go to the Los Angeles Chargers. And I know that sorry, excuse me.
No worries.
With what he does so well, I think there's certain teams that would really benefit from the fact that he is GM adjacent, and he can take over everything and completely separate the ownership from the day-to-day, right? Teams like the Chargers with Spanos, and teams like the Panthers with Tepper, and even the Cowboys with Jerry Jones, they need somebody to just say, hey, you know what? I got all of this. I'll take it from here down. You just go away. Jim Irsay could use that too, even though Shane Steichen did a good job there. Like, I'm not saying they're going to go there. I'm saying that, like, at a certain point, you need to have the owner just completely take a step back from what's going on. And Bill Belichick for those organizations is great. That's why I think the Chargers, where if you really think about it, the most important offensive positions are quarterback and left tackle. And their quarterback's 25 and their left tackle is 24, Rashawn Slater. And they have Zion Johnson. Corey Linsley's probably not going to come back from what I've heard. I'm not sure if you heard anything different, but the heart issue he has, supposedly he's not going to come back. That's what I'm hearing. But with guys like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and the contracts and the money they're owed, the contract, to some degree, there's a reason they say it's a myth that if you got guys that buy in and you work around it, you can make all that work. And right now they have way better weapons. I mean, those wide receivers, think about it. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston, that's way better than what the Falcons have, way better than what the Panthers have. better than what the Commanders even have. And the Commanders, we know probably aren't going to go with him anyway because they've already kind of decided what they're going to do. But it's like, what are they missing? Running back, tight end, and center. Those are fairly. I mean, center is expensive, but fair. You can get a tight end. I mean, he could bring Zeke and Hunter Henry with him. I mean, they're both free agents. So I mean, I look around and the problem with the other teams is that in his mind, he probably says, okay, I'm a great coach. The problem I had was I didn't have a quarterback. So is he going to go to the Falcons, who have the 8th pick and need to trade up to get a quarterback? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they'll bring Russell Wilson with him. He's very good friends with Nick Saban. Do conversations with Nick Saban lead him to think that Bryce Young is a quarterback that he wants to work with, or maybe he wants to avoid that? There's a lot of questions here, and where he goes is going to be very telling. If he goes to the Panthers, that tells you that he thinks that coaching staff was terrible and that Bryce Young actually is a good player. So it's very interesting. I'm very interested to hear what you think, Theo.
See, I do think it's going to be Carolina because at the end of the day, like the Los Angeles one, he's stepping into a situation that on paper is the best one, but Carolina, he'd have the biggest voice, and it's a complete disaster there where he could steer the ship in the right direction very quickly. It could be a certain thing where year 1 there, he gets it back on track. Then year 2, they take a step forward, and Bill Belichick looks like the genius once again. So he's an interesting guy. I don't think this is as cut and dry. I think certainly Los Angeles and him, there's going to be a lot of interest mutually. But I think when it's all said and done, there's going to be a massive payday from Carolina, and that sort of thing is going to happen. So definitely interested in that one. But what a wild offseason. What a crazy day for football and coaches. But we got to talk about these playoff games. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about which player we think could gain the most fantasy value in the NFL playoffs. We're going to go through, we're going to pick each and every game, and then we're going to build a lineup that we think can win $500,000 in the FFPC playoff contest. And we're so confident in this lineup that we're also going to enter it in the $35 contest. We're about to win $600,000 live here on Player Profiler YouTube. We will be right back.
Hey, people always ask me, what's the World Series of Fantasy? What's the Super Bowl of Fantasy? And it's easy. It's the FFPC. Their signature Players Championship has a $6 million prize pool. And their best ball leagues start in February. And they're the answer to so many questions. Hey, what's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC right now. There's more orphans at the FFPC than anywhere else on the internet. That's why we partner with them. So if you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, you love Dynasty, you love best ball, you love seasonal leagues, all types of fantasy footballers need to go to the FFPC. And remember, use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you $25 off your first team. Promo code Underworld, $25 off your first team, no matter what the format is, at the FFPC. Go get it.
Welcome back to First Class Fantasy. I'm Theo Gremminger, joined by Andrew Cooper of FantasyAlarm. And we're going to dive into it. We're going to put together an FFPC lineup shortly. But before we go into that, let's take a bird's eye view. Every single year, you see players, for better or for worse, Andrew, because you go from having a 17-game sample size, and then what happens now in this short period of time gets amplified, for better or for worse. But you think about guys like DK Metcalf during his rookie season, and guys who just kind of leave their exclamation point on the fantasy playoffs, and it makes their redraft value and their dynasty value, for that matter, rise up. Who's a guy for you that really stands to gain the most this weekend, next weekend, or throughout the course of the fantasy playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen both sides of this, right? Like Gabe Davis, 4-touchdown game, had everybody going crazy. But the example I always remember from when I was younger was Jordy Nelson, where he was not, when they went to the Super Bowl against the Steelers, he was not a starting wide receiver on that team. It was, I actually tweeted earlier, they were stacked. It was Greg Jennings, James Jones, and Donald Driver. But in the playoffs, he came out and went berserk. I mean, in the Super Bowl, he had 15 targets, Jordan Nelson. And then from there on out, he was a star, right? That was his coming out party. So this does happen from time to time. The thing is, you need to win a couple games for it to truly blow up. But one guy that I think really could explode onto the national radar if his team can win. I mean, this week, even just one big game might do it for him. But if they can win against the Cowboys, I could see Jaden Reed being a guy where people say, wow, this guy is awesome. And the thing about Jaden Reed that's great for us for fantasy football is that, going back to Matt Kelly and the crew on here and the Sonic Truth back when it was him and Nate Liss, they love Chris Godwin, right? When he was young, but he was a part-time player because they had Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson, right? So early on, part-time guy, then year 3 becomes a full-time guy, absolutely blows up. Great call by the Player Profiler crew, right? In the Roto Onion World channel. Jaden Reed, like, despite him being all over our fantasy radar, only has played like 56% or so snaps this year, right? Like, he's been a part-time guy. Romeo Doubs playing like 80, 90%. You have, when Watson's out, it's Wicks. Like, all these guys are fun. But Jaden Reed, like, as explosive as he's been, scoring 10 touchdowns this year, only a part-time guy. If he comes out and balls out hard here, for better or worse, like you said, next year, a lot of people are going to look at it and say, wow, that guy was that good with all these touchdowns and the rushing, and he blows up in the playoffs, and we realize he was only a part-time guy and could be a full-time guy. I think people are going to be going crazy for Jaden Reed if he has even one big game. But if they beat the Cowboys, man, it's going to be Jaden Reed mania.
Jaden Reed, like, I'm officially a Jaden Reed hype man, and I said I think Jaden Reed is heading towards the 3rd round of redraft next year. And a lot of people push back and they say 5th round, but no, it's just not going to happen. These guys that steam up, these year 2 wide receivers, especially somebody like Reed, like, this is going to be the focal point of Green Bay's offense next year. And Coop, you saw the manufactured touches around the line of scrimmage. You also see his nose for the end zone. You also see how he can get deep. Like, Jaden Reed checks off all the boxes. He's a big time athlete, and he was a 2nd round draft pick. This is not like, some out of, he checks every box.
Chris Godwin, right?
It's love your
he's the opportunity.
Reed might even be in our lineup. You got me so hyped for Jaden Reed.
Oh, look out!
But we might have to. I'll say for me, like, I always, Reed was on my list. I always look for the rookies, but Rashee Rice would be an interesting one. But Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is already a 2024 1st round pick. I think he could absolutely go nuts this playoffs and kind of rise himself up into RB2 overall, which I think right now he's probably not. But I think, he could make a big case for RB2 overall. That's kind of low-hanging fruit. But the one that I think stands to gain the absolute most is Devon Achane. So, like, Miami this week plays against Kansas City. It's a 3.5-point line. We're going to talk about that game. We're going to pick who we think is going to win it in a second. But if we go out and see Devon Achane put up 25 in this game, 20 points, and potentially they get the win, and he does it again next week against Buffalo, like, we don't necessarily need to see 2 games here. But if you legitimately are going through and planning out for 2024 and you're picking in the back end of the 1st round, how can you not consider Devon Achane, especially if he has a big playoff performance here? The guy averages 17.5 points per game as a rookie. We don't think Raheem Mostert is going to have this sort of continued success next year. And Devon Achane is just incredibly explosive. Dealt with injuries throughout the year, also dealt with a preseason injury. This could be like, forget the injuries. I got to have him on my team next year. I'm so stoked for that Miami Kansas City game. Anybody else you got your eye on, Coop, as a potential?
17.5 points per game is bonkers, man. Like, if you think about that's top quarterbacks all time are like 22, 20. LaDainian Tomlinson is like 21. You know what I mean? So 17.5 is it's wild, right? So guys like that. And you look around, if upsets always do it too, right? If you see, like I said, Jaden Reed, if they win, if the Steelers win, there's going to be a hero as part of that, dude. Like George Pickens, if he has a big game in the playoffs,
Steelers are not going to win. They're not going to
win. They're not going to win, but it's like, those are what you want to look for. Is you want to look for those like hero games from guys that we know are capable of it. You know what I mean? That just come out of nowhere, and it's like, wow, Rashad White, another one. It's like, what if the Bucks beat the Eagles? And that's the thing, it happens every single year. We try to avoid it. We do it in college football too. The guys that play games when there aren't many games left have all the eyes on them. So you get that. I think again, Matt, we're on Matt Kelly's channel, so use another word of his, vividness bias, right? When you're seeing the national championship game, it's the only game on TV. You remember that, right? You remember those big games. So when you get to the NFC, whoever makes it to the NFC and AFC conference, you remember those monster games. Whereas this round, maybe not so much, right? When Gabe Davis does against the Chiefs with 4 touchdowns, which, let the record show, he didn't have any catches until Tyrann Mathieu got a concussion in that game. So maybe that game doesn't even happen if the circumstances aren't right. But, it could easily happen. So you got to mention all those guys that are kind of just hanging around. I could go one last deep name is, what if Jameson Williams has some big plays?
There you go.
Some monster plays, right? What if he has a 3-touchdown game? Then all of a sudden we're like, wait a second. Now I remember this guy was just hurt, and now he's got a full-time job, and we'll see. So, a lot of those guys floating around.
Show title is now Andrew Cooper says Jameson Williams is Nico Collins of 2024. Just clip it. So let's get back to the FFPC playoff contest, because I have this ready to go. We're about to look like this and pick a team. But
love it.
Before we do that, the way this contest works is we're going to pick a team, and this team is going to be the team that we have throughout the playoffs. You're only allowed to pick one player per team. And the way that works out now with the expanded playoffs is there's going to be a team left out. Excuse me, there might be 2 left out. When we do the contest, we'll figure it out.
It's 2 left out.
It's 2 left out. And I highly encourage you to read Coop's article at FantasyAlarm and my article here at Player Profiler. If you're choosing to jump into this contest or the FFP in general, use the code Underworld. It gets you $25 off. So if you sign up, you could put an entry into the $35 contest for $10 with the sign-up code Underworld. But when we do this contest, Coop, there's one big caveat. It's cut and dry for the complete playoffs until you get to the Super Bowl. And in the Super Bowl, we're getting double scoring. So the Super Bowl matters the most. So I think we should go through, before we build this lineup, let's come to a conclusion on the teams that are going to win this weekend. So let's pick the winner, and then let's pick the player that we think will be the biggest fantasy standout. We might not use that player, because when we get to it, we're going to talk a little bit about chalk and roster percentages and all that fun stuff. But let's start out right at the top. The first game of the weekend, Saturday afternoon, the Houston Texans, the point spread is down to 2. Houston is a 2-point underdog at home with CJ Stroud behind center against Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns. So home dog, but a short home dog.
Yeah. Let me lay one thing out for the people doing this.
Go ahead.
Quick. So we want guys that are in the Super Bowl, obviously. Well, last year, if you had Jalen Hurts, you crushed because he had 3 rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl. But the year before that, Josh Allen actually was the quarterback to have, and he only played 2 games. He just had 9 touchdowns in those games. So you don't need your quarterback in the Super Bowl, but you need your quarterback to go deep, right? So the couple of the quick caveats are you need your quarterback to go deep, right? And in the first week, this week, we're going to be picking 12 players out of 14 teams. That means 6 teams are going to lose this week. We're going to have 2 teams we're not picking. There's going to be 2 teams that ideally will have our kicker and defense. That gives you an advantage if your kicker and defense lose this week. And then we're going to lose 2 flex players no matter what. No matter how you slice it, you lose a minimum of 2 flex players. And if you lose 4 flex players, you're in big trouble. So you really don't want your kicker and defense moving on. So just because we're picking a team to lose doesn't mean we might not want to pick a star player from that team, right?
Without a doubt, that's a great point. Yeah. And I'll say, to your point, like the quarterback is the most. We can both agree the quarterback's the biggest driver here.
Oh, huge. Yeah. It's everything.
Yeah. So you can't really, like, when we talk about getting unique, what I mean by getting unique is we don't want our lineup to look like every single person's lineup. A shout out to Darren Armani, our friend who runs Fantasy Mojo. He tweeted out what he thought would be the chalk selections. And there was only one player that I had a little bit of pushback on. Question is to you, Who do you think is going to be the most commonly used quarterback in this competition? Because he says it's going to be Lamar Jackson. Baltimore, of course, has the 1 seed. But I think when it's all said and done, I think quarterback, there's not going to be a true, push you over the top chalk play, because I think there's going to be a number of people using Josh Allen,
Right.
a number of people using Dak. I think Brock Purdy is going to be a pivot to a Christian McCaffrey for a lot of managers. Who do you think will be the chalk play?
So I think that the more people look at the scoring and think about the contest from the standpoint of having like if the fact that Lamar Jackson has the bye week is going to scare people away, even though it shouldn't, because the Super Bowl counts as double. Whatever team you think goes to the Super Bowl is who you should be picking to some degree. But this format is custom built for Lamar Jackson. For Josh Allen, because not only is it 4-point passing, right, and 6-point rushing, but it's only -1 for turnovers. So when he does that arm punt that he likes to do on 3rd and long and just throw it down there, which actually helps the team in some cases, like last week where, it's 3rd and long and he chucks up a pick and the guy, takes a knee in the end zone, they gain 15 yards on that, right? So when he does that, it doesn't hurt you as much in year. So I think, it's between Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Some people have Jalen Hurts, but I could see people going Lamar Jackson. But I think Josh Allen at the end of the day is going to be the most rostered player.
Interesting. And I think I'm kind of with you on that one, because I think there's a lot of love right now for a Buffalo Super Bowl as well. But let's go ahead and let's go ahead and pick these games. So Houston right now, short home underdogs. They're +2 at home against Cleveland. Joe Flacco against CJ Stroud. Very, very cool game. But this is a tilting game, and the team that wins this game is going to play Baltimore next week. Which way are you going here with your pick for who's going to win? And give me a player that you think will shine fantasy-wise.
Yeah, so honestly, I think that the Browns are going to end up winning this one. And it's not sexy, but a lot of times the team that's better in the trenches, better on defense, they win the game. And I love what the Texans have done on a quick turnaround. New coaches across the board, D'Amico Ryans, Bobby Slowick, but it's not quite there yet from an offensive line standpoint or a defensive standpoint. So I think the Browns do pull this one out. That doesn't mean I don't want to use players from these teams. And one quick word of caution to people out there. So I had a few people that said, oh, you know what? Here's my roster. And they said, okay, the winner of this game plays the Ravens most likely. So I don't want to have, I don't want to have these players going deep. And they say, okay, I'm going to pick the Browns defense and use Kaimi Fairbairn, which my response to that is you're guaranteeing one of your kicker or defense move on, which means you're guaranteeing one of your other flex players get eliminated. I wouldn't do that. So for me, I look around in week 1 and I kind of like the idea of David Njoku going crazy.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
And David Njoku, I think, will be chalk. I actually think most people are going to use him or the Browns defense. And I think that it doesn't matter because he has the potential in this tight end. FFPC, again, everyone, is tight end premium scoring. So it's PPR with an extra half point for tight end. So Njoku is capable of putting up a 30-pointer. And if Njoku goes up against Baltimore next week, I actually think Cleveland would be a live dog in that game. I love having Njoku in this lineup. Njoku seems like one of those guys who's chalk, but correct. So we're both on the same page. Let's move on here. And for Texans, I do think Fairbairn is an interesting one, though, because it's a home game against a very good defense. Let's keep him as an option. Anybody else you want to consider out of the Houston Texans just to keep on our notes?
Yeah, so we're not going to go Stroud. So, and I don't like Singletary going up against the Browns and then potentially the Ravens, to be honest. Like, I like his usage, but it's too off the beaten path. I mean, just for example, here's last year's lineup that won the $200 contest. The one that won the $35 contest was wild, but the one that won the $200 contest, I mean, stop me when I say or here, I'll say the names and you tell me if it's chalk or not. Quarterback was Jalen Hurts from last year.
Pretty chalk.
Yeah. Austin Eckler.
Chalk.
Christian McCaffrey.
Chalk.
Jamar Chase.
Chalk.
Justin Jefferson.
Chalk.
Travis Kelce.
Chalk.
CeeDee Lamb.
Chalk.
Saquon Barkley.
Chalk.
Stephon Diggs.
It's straight up chalk. You're giving me all the chalk.
His kicker was Justin Tucker.
It's complete chalk. It's literally chalk.
And then his 2 other picks were Christian Kirk, which, I mean, You didn't have to pick a Jaguar, but he was probably the best one.
And you got the
then
second game. You got the second game because
you
they
got the
beat
second
Los
game.
Angeles. Yep.
And then his throwaway was he just picked Miami defense.
Who actually turned over Buffalo a few
did
times in that
okay.
game.
They did okay.
And didn't they have they took one to the house on a, correct me if I'm wrong, did they take one to the house on a return or something wild?
Yeah,
I don't remember exactly.
There was something like that.
Yeah, something.
So
they got.
Yeah, so it was that. So that one was pure chalk, and then the one that won the $35 contest, which actually, if the person is doing what we did and put that into both contests, then he would have won both because his $35 team, the winner of the $35 team, scored the most points overall. That one was the opposite. He had 4 tight ends in the lineup, 4 tight ends, right? So it's like you can go either way with it. My opinion is I'm thinking let's get as much like slam dunk chalk in there as possible. And then the difference maker might be like we have David Njoku in there, and in our minds right now he's our tight end, but that doesn't stop us from having 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends or something like that, where it might even be all the best players from the matchups. But at the end of the day, people aren't thinking that way. They're thinking I need 1 tight end, and then now I start a bunch of wide receivers. So little things like that, man. So let's get those guys in there and let's move on to the next game.
Yeah, I do think that that's an interesting conversation because you are the tight end whisperer, and I play a ton of tight end premium with the FFPC. I do think you reach a point where occasionally you see a 3 tight end build that's really, really strong. And I will say this year is chock full of very strong tight end options in this in the NFL playoffs in general. But I feel like once you start going 2 tight end crazy,
then
it limits your upside.
Right. You
those
want,
guys.
What you want is because we're looking for single game specialness, right?
Yeah.
So that's why David Njoku, even if you're starting Njoku and then you still go with a Nico Collins, like it's tight end premium. So you look at TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson last year had 10 catches he played 1 game, 10 catches for 129, which is 27.9 points, right? Like if Dalton Schultz last year had 2 touchdowns, like the tight ends are capable of these single explosive games where if they get eliminated, okay. Some of our flexes need to get eliminated. Some of our players are going to be eliminated. Two of our players are going to be eliminated no matter what. So that's why I don't mind it for this. But yeah, again, you don't want to go too crazy. But I mean, we were very close to having a situation where I was starting 5 tight ends, Theo. If Sam Laporta doesn't hurt his knee and Evan Ingram makes the playoffs, I'm going insane with tight end because I could easily go Kelsey, Njoku, Laporta, Ingram, and then throw in a Dalton Kincaid. You know what I mean?
So let's move on. So this game, Kansas City, Miami, we dropped these videos for Player Profiler with our Super Bowl picks and our wild card picks, and I picked Miami to win. And then Vegas is like, Theo, not so fast, my friend. Line pops from 3.5 to 4.5. So right now it's Kansas City minus 4.5. It's going to be very, very cold in Arrowhead. And Miami last year with Skylar Thompson nearly upsets Buffalo. Kansas City, for as many offensive issues they have, first of all, Andrew, who's going to win this game?
Dude, I think honestly, if we were allowed to play this game in a dome, then I would be on board with Miami. But it's the weather, man. Have you seen it? The forecasts are getting
awful.
Worse. Usually they come in and the forecasts are bad, and we go, oh, boogeyman, and then they ease up as we get closer to the game. It seems like it's getting worse, man. It's gonna be that weather that's like mean. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if folks listening, if you ever played football, but like there's a certain point where you just don't want to do it. You know what I mean? Like where it's just like the prospects of getting hit in that kind of weather is terrible, and the ball doesn't feel the same, and the ground doesn't feel the same, and that's what they're saying for this week.
So there's the Miami though is interesting because the overwhelming chalk is going to be Tyreek Hill. How can you not play Tyreek Hill in the revenge game against his former team in his old stadium? It's almost poetic. But I think this is actually this is where we could potentially pivot. Do you feel that way, or do you think this is you want to cram Tyreek Hill into the lineup?
So I kind of want to just jam him in there. I say we leave this for a flex.
So leave this for a flex. Then let's ignore Miami. We'll come back to it.
What I'm doing in my one and done leagues, I'm starting Achane because that's who you want to start, right? Yeah, that's who you want to go with. I'm using him in my one and done leagues because Mostert's banged up, and I'm like, okay, if Mostert's dealing with a knee issue and we have one game and it's a game they might not even win, I might as well go with Achane here, knowing that if they do win the game, I still have Mostert in my back pocket. I still have Tyreek Hill in my back pocket. If they lose the game, maybe I still get one good cold weather game, and all I need is Achane to outscore Tyreek Hill for one game, and now I have a leg up on all the tight end, all the Tyreek teams. So in one and done, I'm going that way. In FFPC, I'm kind of looking at it and saying, well, there's a world where if I don't have Tyreek Hill, I just flat out lose, and that scares me.
So then let's leave. We won't pick a Dolphin yet. We'll do it in a minute. I have Hill and Achane as choices for us. Well, how about Kansas City here?
I know.
So the ultimate pivot move, the ultimate pivot move right now is this is the first time in quite some time where Patrick Mahomes might be like quarterback 5 in terms of roster percentage, quarterback 6. No one's going to use Mahomes. I think the overwhelming chalk, even though he hasn't been good, the tight end premium, Travis Kelce, they know they're going to get the home game. I think Kelsey's going to be chalk. It doesn't excite me. It might not be wrong, but it doesn't excite me. I kind of like Rashee Rice here. Your thoughts on a Kansas City Chief? I'll throw one other option out to your Coop. If we think the Chiefs are going to play one game, potentially, or 2 games, and you think they lose next week to Buffalo, then potentially using a Butker or a Chiefs defense is not the worst pivot. But if you think that they win 2, the whole thing is just game theory. Crazy.
Travis Kelce historically has done very well against Buffalo.
Big time.
I personally, and again, if this were not a tight end premium format, it would be easier for me. But I do lean Travis Kelce. Now the thing with Mahomes is that the format's not built for this type of quarterback, but
and what Coop means it's a 4-point passing.
4-point passing, yeah. And it's like it there's the penalty. He takes care of the football, and the guys that it doesn't penalize you for turning the football over. It doesn't matter. -1 point for fumbles and interceptions is meaningless to me. It literally means nothing to me. You know what I mean? So I look at the thing is, last year it was Jalen Hurts. The year before that it was Josh Allen. The year before that it was Tom Brady. And basically what happened with Brady was he had 2 or 3 touchdown passes in every game, and he played this weekend. So he played 4 games with the Super Bowl counting his double. So he basically played 5 games, and he even mixed in a rushing touchdown. So that's what you need from Mahomes. And Mahomes is entirely capable of playing to the Super Bowl and having 2 or 3 touchdowns. So in each game. So if you want to go Mahomes here, I'm in. I'm down. I don't have a Mahomes lineup, and I'd like to have.
It's a unique approach. I don't love it. It doesn't excite me.
I don't want to do it.
Puts us. Yeah, I don't want to do it either.
I want to put Travis Kelce in.
Let's just put Kelce in, and let's have something we're both feeling really happy about,
and honestly,
not overcomplicated.
Now, and the beauty of this is now that we have Kelce and Njoku, our lineup is actually, oddly enough, more unique than many lineups, because many people are going to sit there and say, I have to start one or the other. And they're not even going to go there. Like Njoku, if they start Travis Kelce, they're going to look at Njoku and be like, why would I start Njoku? I have Travis Kelce. So that itself is pretty unique already.
I love it. I love it. 30 points from Njoku, and then we'll be like, man, why did we play Kelce? He got only 14 points this game, but then we could potentially get Kelce for multiple games. And Coop is flag planting Kelce having a big game against Buffalo like he always does next week. So let's keep this thing going. We still got to pick a Dolphin, but we'll save that one. And we could choose to ignore the Dolphins as well.
Right.
The next game to discuss is the layup. Buffalo is going to beat the Steelers. The line is 9.5. The line is 10. The line is big. But which Buffalo Bill do we lean towards? I have a lineup already that's a Josh Allen lineup. Okay. And as chalky as it is, I think Buffalo is headed to the Super Bowl. That's just the way I see the thing laying out. But there'll be a lot of Josh Allen lineups. I think James Cook is interesting. You brought up Dalton Kincaid. And also Mojo is talking up how he thinks Stephon Diggs is going to be the chalk, despite Diggs having a really, really poor end of the season. Which way are you leaning with the Buffalo Bills?
I'm going to have a few lineups with Kincaid. So we don't got to do Kincaid here. I say we go Josh Allen or James Cook, and I'm down for either. I love the idea of James Cook. His pass catching ability in a full PPR format and the way he's played as of late, and he's also capable of monster games. So I'm either down with Josh Allen or James Cook. If we don't go with Josh Allen, are we going with Lamar?
Or we're going with an NFC quarterback. I would be when we get to the San Francisco discussion. Well, let's talk about it, because I think the number one chalk play of all chalk plays is going to be Christian McCaffrey. Do you agree on that?
Yes. I don't want to use I don't want to use Purdy because I don't want to use a non-rushing quarterback unless they have a possibility of playing 4 games.
Okay, so let's then let's talk about this. Is there another San Francisco pivot you want to use besides Christian McCaffrey, or is Christian McCaffrey so locked in at such an important scoring position that you feel like we'd be missing out if we pivoted to a Debo or a Brandon Ayuk or a George Kittle?
I want to use McCaffrey.
Okay, so let's
he's the highest scoring PPR position player of all time, and he's actually, even if you include the quarterbacks in there, he's like 3. I mean, I don't need to make an argument for Christian McCaffrey.
Say no more. I want to use McCaffrey as well.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the kind of one you don't really want to overthink, because you could be playing from behind with McCaffrey, and 49ers have a really nice path here, because I personally think, let's talk about this game next. This is the Monday night game, back-to-back seasons of Tampa Bay hosting a Monday night playoff game. Last year, it was Dallas coming in there and beating the hell out of them. Tom Brady's last game. Now, this year, you have a reeling Philadelphia Eagles coming into town. Eagles have been really trending down, and I kind of like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here in an upset. It's kind of a redemption song. These two teams played this exact game earlier in the year, and Philadelphia stomped them. And there's been nothing but, bad vibes since the 10-1 start. And on the flip side, I think Tampa Bay at home, it's going to be electric, a chance to win, a chance for like the Baker Mayfield game of his career. And Vegas is telling us right now that the current line, and we're recording this on Thursday afternoon, is an even 3. It's Philadelphia -3. So it's like, seems like a live puppy dog. Where are you at on this game?
Yeah, so we said we're going to use Fairbairn, right? And if we're going to go that way and lean into that narrative, maybe we do use like the Eagles defense, because you want your defenses and your kicker to get eliminated. But if they win one game, it's not the end of the world. If they make it to the AFC or NFC championship, based on my research, you're in trouble. Like, you need your flex players and your wide receivers and your running backs to make it that deep. So you don't want your defense to make it far, but they can win one game. It's not the end of the world. For the Buccaneers, man, I feel like in this one, I kind of do want to go chalk with Mike Evans.
Yeah.
I could be sold on Rachaad White. And I don't know, like, again, Chris Godwin is an interesting pivot, but I think Evans has just been so good, man.
Evans is a smash.
Yeah.
Mike Evans is a smash. Mike Evans has been so good this year. And Coop, I also don't think this is the kind of chalk that's going to get you in trouble.
Right.
Because I think there's going to be people that avoid the Bucks and they don't necessarily use a buck. I don't think this is like a game where people are like, I have to use one.
Right.
When you look at the odds to win the Super Bowl, they're like bottom 4 among all these teams. So I think Mike Evans will be chalky, but not crazy chalk. And I think he could absolutely shred Philadelphia. Mike Evans is about to be a free agent. Mike Evans is about to be paid. Mike Evans led the NFL in touchdown receptions, and Baker Mayfield is going to have tunnel vision for him in a big, important game. And running backs against the Eagles, historically are not scoring as much as wide receivers, in a huge disparity here. So I think we lock in a player we both like in Mike Evans, and let's leave Philadelphia off now. They're potentially our defense. Yep.
Yeah. Mike Evans, it's like if your players are going to lose, historically, I'm looking through all the numbers, and there's so much chalk. And then there's guys that just had monster games, right? Like Gabe Davis, 4-touchdown game. 2019, Raheem Mostert for the 49ers, 4-touchdown game. Like, if we're gonna have a guy that could potentially lose in the first round, Mike Evans is absolutely capable of having 150 yards and 3 touchdowns in a losing game, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you want. You want a guy to go out in a blaze of glory if they're going to lose.
So we'll lock that one in. It's going to be, Mike Evans. That's a play for us. It's locked in. We're going to consider the Eagles defense. Quick question in the chat that we kind of glazed over. Albert in the chat is asking us thoughts on using Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, Albert, what's up, dude? Anthony, what's going on, man? Toronto Dave in the chat. What's up, guys? Yeah, I mean, Anthony also seeing, Ryan Voltz and everybody hanging out. Anthony has been throwing out names all year in my chat on Coop's Fantasy Football Fiasco, and I know Albert's been hanging out too. Britt Flynn is really is in on using Pacheco. He does have that one game upside where, like, he's had multiple games this year with 150 plus yards from scrimmage. I don't. I have a hard time going with Pacheco because I think if the put it this way, if the Chiefs are going to go deep, I want to have Mahomes or Kelsey. And if the Chiefs are going to lose this week, then they're probably not going to be running the ball a ton. That's the problem that I have is that like I can create a world in my mind where Travis Kelsey has a monster game and they lose. It's hard for me to envision a world where Pacheco goes nuts and they lose to the Dolphins. I just feel like Mahomes takes the game. If they're losing, Mahomes just takes the game in his own hands. So I don't know. I personally, I feel like it's got to be Mahomes or Kelsey.
I agree with you completely. I think it's, I like the idea of Pacheco as well, but I think it's trying to maybe get a little too cute. Let's talk about Pittsburgh though, real quick. We have James Cook or Josh Allen as the Buffalo Bill we're going to use, depending on how we go through here. I'm on George Pickens as the Pittsburgh Steeler that I would be interested in if we use a Steeler. Are you on that path as well?
Personally, I've been using either the Steelers defense or nobody, to be honest. Okay. Yeah, because the Steelers defense, again, we want your team to lose, but like again, I'm looking around and I'm saying, okay, turnovers are only -1, so it doesn't hurt Josh Allen, but he is a turnover machine, is he not? Like we're looking for, and he takes sacks. He takes sacks that don't even look like sacks. Like he scrambles around a bit and then gets tackled 2 yards short of line of scrimmage. Like that's still a sack. So, like, I look at the Steelers and a 36.5 point over-under and think to myself, you know what? Like, the Steelers could gracefully lose this game with the defense having the exact kind of game I want my defense to have, which is, TJ Watt gets after the quarterback, Josh Allen throws a stupid interception or two, and then they lose. And then, that's all I want out of my defense.
So let's leave Pittsburgh and Eagles under our defensive options. Yeah. Let's keep this going. Green Bay and Dallas. Now, this one's pretty cut and dry. I think if we use a Green Bay Packer, we both love Jaden Reed. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put him on the list. We talked about him a little earlier as a guy that we both think could rise up. He's the most fun play for Green Bay, and pretty much makes the most sense too. Now Dallas is interesting, Coop, because you have the wide receiver 1 overall on the season in CeeDee Lamb, and then you have top 3 quarterback in Dak Prescott. Mm-hmm. If you're betting on let's take a step back. How far do you see Dallas going? Because I think they can make the Super Bowl.
They easily can. I mean, they're the 4th best odds. People are kind of discounting. Like the teams that get the bye week are always going to be like plus 200, plus 300, right? You know what I mean? Like I don't think I've ever seen a bye week team be like plus 500. And then the best teams are going to have like plus 650 odds, plus 750 odds. I don't have it in front of me, but the Bills and the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl are last I checked, they're right there. Yeah. So right the Cowboys are probably, they're a top 4 team minimum in Super Bowl odds. So you have to consider them as a team to go to the NFC Championship at the very least. The thing, again, Dak falls into that category where if I'm only picking Dak if the Cowboys are the team I think goes to the Super Bowl. And in this case, it's possible, but I'm not doing it. I'd rather. The other part of it is that doesn't have to be the case, right? Because the Rams went to the Super Bowl, and 2 years ago when the Rams and Bengals went to the Super Bowl, Joe Burrow was not the quarterback, and neither was Matthew Stafford. The winning players were Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp, and the quarterback was Josh Allen. In fact, nobody with those quarterbacks made any money, right? So it's like you got to factor in the possibility that even if they go to the Super Bowl, CeeDee Lamb is still the better pick, or Tony Pollard is a better pick. Probably not Jake Ferguson.
Let's go devil's advocate here because we've had 3 40-point home performances for Dallas in like the last 10 games. And now they have a home game against Green Bay. Looks like a shootout, high total. Dallas is a big favorite. Dak could put up a number. Then next week, Dallas will be playing against Detroit. Again, a difficult game, but a team that they've already seen, and again, will be at AT&T Field. Then they would be a chance for a third game against San Francisco, which would be a very difficult game, but a game where we'll say it's going to be like San Francisco -3, San Francisco -3.5 as the line. So I might get 3 games out of Dak, and this might be a situation where he still could be the leading quarterback scorer in this entire contest. So I'm interested
Without the mobility, you need your quarterback to play 3 games. Without the possibility of having a game with multiple rushing touchdowns, though, I just have a hard time with it. That's where I'm
so then let's move on from this and let's go with CD Lamb as a player that we both really, really like.
Yeah.
And let's lock him into our lineup. So far our lineup is Christian McCaffrey, Mike Evans, CD Lamb, Travis Kelce, David Njoku, and Kaimi Fairbairn. We are down to Philadelphia or Pittsburgh as our defensive choice. And we have right now James Cook or Josh Allen is going to be the player we use from Buffalo. Now let's talk about I think the most fun game of the entire weekend, Matt Stafford revenge game. The Rams are absolutely red hot. They go into Detroit. The line is tight. It's a 3-point favorite. Detroit Lions against Matt Stafford, who's won a Super Bowl and holds all the records in Detroit. There's going to be a lot of mixed emotions for the Lions fans there. Happy to see Stafford again, but also view themselves as a Super Bowl winner. You have multiple options on Detroit here. You have multiple options on LA. Fantasy Mojo, Darren Armani is projecting Kyren Williams to be a chalk pick, and he's projecting Amon-Ra St. Brown to be a chalk pick. I think this is a chance for us to get a little bit different. Who wins the game, first of all, Coop?
Yeah, this is tough, man. I think that the Rams win this game. As crazy as it sounds, man, not having Laporta. And again, going back through, Jared Goff has had good games, even when Laporta has down games, but just not having him out there at all is going to be rough, dude, because, this team, you have to remember the Rams, Brad Holmes was the head scout that helped build the Rams and got Cooper Kupp. And then he went over to the Lions and kind of built the same thing. But these Rams have faced a Cooper Kupp style offense for a long time. And that's what this Lions offense is with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Players other than Amon-Ra St. Brown are going to need to contribute in a big way in this game. No question, because they know how to work with that. So I think the Rams can pull this one out, but I'm treating it the same way I often treat a lot of these matchups in saying, I just want the best, most explosive playmaker on each team. And with the Rams, with the Lions, that's Amon-Ra St. Brown. You can make a case in one and done leagues. I love going like Jahmyr Gibbs, knowing that I have David Montgomery in my back pocket. But in this case, I'm going with Amon-Ra St. Brown. With the Rams, there's a bigger question because you have Puka Nacua, who's been amazing. Cooper Kupp, who is who could easily outscore Puka Nacua. And then you have Kyren Williams, who has 7 straight games with 100 yards from scrimmage, which is exactly what you want. Is you want a guy that's capable of not even just consistency if they do win, but monster games if they do lose. So honestly, I'll make the easy pick with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'll throw it back to you to get your opinion on the Lions.
Okay, so we're gonna lock in Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then when it comes to the Rams, you bring up some interesting points. I think Kyren Williams is going to be widely used throughout this contest, and I think there will be some Cooper Kupp goodwill where he's going to be a little bit more rostered than you would think.
Right.
I actually think
it's not fun. Where it's almost not sneaky enough. Right.
It's not sneaky enough
to be worth it.
I think Puka Nacua is the one you want. And I think Puka Nacua is Coop. Here's one for you. Puka Nacua needs 92 catches, and he breaks the all-time NFL record for most receptions in his first 2 seasons in the league. This is going to be like the Puka. We talk about guys rising up. Puka Nacua is already right at that 1-2 turn for redraft next year. I think he locks himself into the first round. I think he has a really big game, and I think he could have another big game in week 2. And I think that Nacua is the one that I want to kind of stand for. It does leave us with a hole at running back where we're going to have to cover that up.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And the thing is, it also protects us to some degree having Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown, because one of them's going to lose. And it's not like you could if the game script goes awry, right? And Kyren Williams, they just can't run the ball at all. And it's very tough to run the ball in the Lions. If you lose with Kyren Williams, then you're in trouble, right? Like if he loses week 1, but if you have two wide receivers and it goes to a shootout and one of those teams loses, you know what? It could be, it could be great. I mean, one of these teams has to lose. So you're going to lose one of these guys anyway. You might as well hope for a shootout where, you know what, both guys went off and one of them goes off in the sunset. So I don't mind at all. But yeah, running back, that's the real question, man, because we're going to need somebody. And that's where, we look back and say, maybe it's Isaiah Pacheco. Maybe it is Devon Achane. Maybe it is Aaron Jones. So it's those three cats that we're thinking about. And I'll tell you, a lot of Cowboys fans, Chris Sellers and Britt Flynn, have been telling me that, and unless you're a fan of a team, you might not pick up on these little things. Like, I know all the Patriot killers that just show up and they cause havoc, but people might not know that if they're not a fan of the team. Cowboys fans are telling me that Aaron Jones is like the devil to the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Like they're saying that he goes and crushes the Cowboys. Whether that narrative holds, they're saying that this guy's a problem for them.
Okay, so we'll put him in consideration with Jaden Reed. We have a hole at running back. We have a hole at quarterback. We have one more flex to fill, and we have our defense. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens, which is the one team that we haven't talked about. They have the bye week. This is a weird team because you have a couple options here. Yeah. Lamar Jackson is going to be a heavy chalk, and we do need a quarterback. So our quarterback decision right now, Coop, comes down to Lamar versus Josh Allen. That's going to kind of steer the ship of which way we go at running back. Because if we're going to go Lamar here, and we think Lamar gets to the Super Bowl, which I'm not sure.
Right.
They're really, really good.
They're really good. They're a very complete team. That's what stinks. We probably should pick the quarterback based on. Here's the problem. Well, and here's why Lamar is going to end up being the chalk. And why I think the thought process goes that way is that once you put Josh Allen in there, now you have a hard time picking a Raven, because I'm not going to start Gus Edwards. I'm not going to start Justice Hill. Isaiah Likely is the second best option because it's tight end premium. Zay Flowers, I only am picking Zay Flowers if I think the Ravens are going to lose in the second week. That's my narrative, is like, okay, if I think this team's going to lose, I'll pick Zay Flowers.
I have a lineup where I picked the Baltimore Ravens, I believe their defense, because I thought Cleveland could upset them in week 2.
Yeah. That's not crazy at all.
Here's the other thing. If Cleveland plays Baltimore in week 2, I think that's a real game. But I think if Houston goes into Baltimore in week 2, it's a woodshed game and a wake-up call. So it's almost like, that first game tilts this a little bit for me. Baltimore also, if they would get by the next week, they would get to play against, presumably, Buffalo, Kansas City, coming off of playing one another in Baltimore, where they've been very, very strong. I mean, you think back to like that Lions game where the Lions come in and into Baltimore, and Baltimore just completely woodsheds them. There was a couple of playoff teams that came into Baltimore and just got woodshedded. So I don't know. For some reason, like my heart is saying fade Baltimore, but my head is saying that they're good enough that they can make it to the Super Bowl.
Well, I think that's why I like making multiple lineups, because in this particular lineup, we have to factor in game theory, right, Theo? So look at what we've done so far. If we think that Baltimore is going to lose and we're going to build around that, then we need to make changes, because I love David Njoku, but if David Njoku is our player that makes it to the Super Bowl, we're going to lose. Even if he makes it to the AFC Championship, we're in trouble. Right? You don't want your flex cute tight end play to make it, unless he just is, he has been very good, but he would need to string together 3 monster games to be worth making it to the AFC Championship for us. And if Kyrie Fairbairn makes it to the AFC Championship, we are smoked.
We're smoked.
Well, with what we've built already, we have to be Ravens fans, unless we want to change stuff around.
Okay, so that comes down to it. You're the guest here. For this lineup, because we can go back and change some stuff. For this particular lineup, Josh Allen, who is my lean, or Lamar Jackson, which I have no problem building with Lamar as well. I think it's going to be Baltimore or Buffalo making the Super Bowl. I think both of these guys could really lead the team the right way. And I think it's also sort of if these teams played 10 times in Baltimore in the AFC Championship game, I think it still might be like 6-4. 5-5. I think they're that tight.
Yeah, I think for this build, for what we've built so far, because we're already an hour in and we can't go back and do it again.
That's right. And you got to
What
go.
we do is we start. I'm fine actually. I talked to Scott.
No. Let's do it. Let's
do Lamar Jackson and James Cook. I already hit up. It was Scott Fish I was going to talk to. I already told him we're going to postpone it to tomorrow. I texted him. I was like, me and Theo are on one here. Me and Theo are making $600,000 right now.
Shout out to Scott Fish. If we win the 600K, you are getting the same edible arrangement that Billy Muzio is getting.
Billy Muzio
That's right.
Same one.
Billy Muzio, you missed the show, so you're getting a beautiful edible arrangement if we win 600K. The best one on the site.
Little spoiler for folks out there. It's still in the works, so don't get too crazy. But the conversation we're having is we're trying to get Reddit a little more involved in the Scott Fish Pool and Fantasy Cares. So if you're folks over on Reddit, stay tuned. We're trying to bring something specific to you guys for that. But yeah, so I say we go Lamar Jackson and James Cook. That fills our running back hole as well. Makes our lives a lot easier, don't you think?
Okay, so we've got to go. We're going to go James Cook. So right now our decision comes down to Miami.
You're taking
Dolphins
notes, I hope. Yeah, the Miami Dolphin, the flex. And it could go anywhere, and it could be the difference between us making $500,000 or being losers. So
let's get the easy one out of the way. Defense out of the way. Do we want to go Pittsburgh or do we want to go Philadelphia?
Well, actually, I say we do the flex first. Let's see the way we just did it. Let's see if we can reverse engineer it based on what we have going on here. Let's say we've got the Ravens going at least to the AFC Championship, right?
Yep.
Travis Kelce, though, could lose this week. If Travis Kelce loses this week, then it's not the end of the world for us because we would still have Tyreek Hill or Achane, and we want Kelce inevitably to lose to Lamar Jackson anyway, right?
Well, let's get interesting here and just a little more game theory is without getting too chalky, we kept ourselves unique already because we have James Cook, which I think is going to be pretty unique. Nakua, I don't think is going to be chalky. We have a lot of other chalky type plays, but it's not crazy chalky. I think we could afford a Tyreek Hill if we think Tyreek Hill is going to absolutely blow the doors off the Kansas City Chiefs.
It should be Tyreek Hill.
I think it's Tyreek Hill. If you twist my arm, I could go Devon Achane.
Yeah, and the thing is, when people look at this lineup next year, because in hindsight, it always looks like the chalk, right? When people look at this lineup next year, they go through, even if they say, oh, James Cook was chalk, Christian McCaffrey's chalk, when they get down to Njoku, that's our Christian Kirk, where the lineup last year that won was chalk across the board, Christian Kirk, and then Miami defense, right? So, for us, I don't see why. I mean, ours, if you look at last year's lineup that won, ours is out there. You know what I mean? Compared to what that is, because James Cook and Njoku are kind of off the beaten path for sure.
So defensive and special team wise, which way do you want to go here? And I'll say this to you, Coop. We are ignoring the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
And we're going to be ignoring. It seems like we're going to be ignoring the Philadelphia Eagles too. So do you want to go Pittsburgh or Philly?
So the thing is, I mean, the Steelers and Packers both, they have the bottom two odds for Super Bowl. If you think that those teams go deep, even to the NFC Championship, Toronto Dave's got it. Put your money up, right? I think the Steelers is $100 to win 13K, right? So which is wasting $100. So I say we go Eagles. I think the Eagles, that protects us a little bit, because if the Eagles win one game, at least we're pulling some points out of that. Whereas we don't think the Steelers are going to win one. We could still finish in the money if the Eagles win one, as long as they lose the next round. If the Steelers aren't going to win. So, you know what I mean? We're talking things would need to break exactly perfect for us. So I don't know. I like the way this one looks.
Yeah, awesome. And this was a lot of fun. We're going to enter this lineup twice. We're going to enter this in the 35. We're going to enter this in the 200. And just to give you a recap, if you're listening on the podcast, our lineup is now Lamar Jackson, James Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, David Njoku, Kaimi Fairbairn, and the Philadelphia Eagles defense. Coop, let everybody know what you have going on over at Fantasy Alarm.
Yeah, I mean, I just won $600,000. So, well, actually, technically $300,000 minus the cost of one edible arrangement since
Two.
we're doing well. We're splitting
Billy
them.
Muzio. Yeah, that's
we're-
right. That's right.
We're splitting them. So only subtract one from mine. Yeah, Billy Muzio and Scott Fish edible arrangements. So yeah, please address me as such when you do follow me on Twitter at Coupe Fiasco, right? As a 300,000-aire. All right.
That's right.
But all my stuff is over there. All my articles are on Fantasy Alarm. Most of my videos are on the Fantasy Alarm YouTube, but I tweet everything out. So if you just follow me, it's easiest to find me there. On Reddit, I'm Coop. There it is. You can find me like Theo said, like we do this, and then when we get a break, we go and talk more football. So I probably just today earlier I had a little break. I probably wrote 10,000 words just fighting with somebody on Reddit. So I'm talking ball all the time. If you want to talk ball, hit me up on those platforms.
For sure. This was a lot of fun. I'm going to be back again. If you want to sign up for this FFPC contest, use the code Underworld. Get yourself $25 off so you can join the $35 contest and compete for $100,000 for $10 if you use our code and you haven't been signed up. This was a great deal of fun. Coop, it's always a blast chopping it up with you. Check out press coverage tomorrow. I'm going to be with Jim Coventry and Alan Soslowski. We are going to do a 2024 mock draft. We're going to rank them. We're going to go through. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, this was a fantastic show, but everybody enjoy the fantasy playoffs. The NFL playoffs. This is like what you want as a football fan. Sit back and enjoy the moment and stick with us here at First Class Fantasy. We got you covered all season long.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.